Democrats kick off the week with quite the unexpected Monday surprise by showering President Donald Trump with praise after his massively successful meeting with the head of NATO. Ironically enough, the reason the Democrats are happy isn't due to the benefits America will be getting. It's because this also happens to be quite the sweetheart deal for their precious Ukraine. Now, before my fellow MAGAs start freaking out, start getting skeptical, assuming this is us breaking out the blank check yet again for Ukraine, it is not that kind of deal at all, and we're going to talk about all the details in this. But I can summarize it by saying this: that was Biden's way of handling the situation. We're seeing why his name is Donald Art of the Deal Trump. As always, like the video and subscribe to the channel. But before I show you the Democrat media falling head over heels for Donald Trump, here's a quick little clip from Trump's meeting with the head of NATO, discussing what happened and just how important and consequential it is.
So if I was Vladimir Putin today and hear you speaking about what you were planning to do in 50 days and this announcement, I would reconsider whether I should not take negotiations about Ukraine more seriously than I was doing at the moment, if I was Vladimir Putin. But when I'm Ukraine, I think this is really great news for them. So I really want to thank you for that. And it means the Europeans paying for it. And again, I mentioned all these countries, we will deal with that. And exactly as you said, it might also mean that countries will move equipment fast into Ukraine and then the US later backfilling it because speed is of the essence here. So really, thank you. This is important.
So Donald Trump is letting Vladimir Putin know that he is fed up with his disrespectful games, taking advantage of President Trump's goodwill, stringing him along in bad faith negotiations, and now blatantly escalating by launching devastating attacks on the capital of Ukraine. Now, this is why we as MAGA supporters should be thrilled about this deal. It highlights two massive wins related to NATO. Number one, just a few weeks ago, Donald Trump got all of the NATO members to commit to a 5% of GDP figure that they'll contribute to NATO. When he first took over in 2016, the number was at 2, and people weren't hitting those numbers. Now they've raised it to 5. This is so significant because this relieves a substantial burden on the American taxpayer to fund, support, and essentially maintain all of NATO's military readiness. Most Europeans think that Americans hate the concept of NATO. I can't speak for everybody, but I myself do not. In theory, that kind of alliance would be incredibly successful at deterring adversaries. The problem is the alliance in practicality has just become essentially a second American military that sole purpose is to defend and protect the interests of Europe. Europe's essentially been able to coast off of the strength of the United States military as an umbrella. And if they have the protection of $1 trillion army, what's the point in them investing any of their own resources on an actual military that has the capabilities to defend itself? They don't have to spend anywhere near the amount of money that would traditionally be required with the level of wealth that the European countries have. Instead, they've decided to direct all their money to becoming socialist welfare states. No one expects NATO countries to spend as much as the United States. They simply can't. They're not big and rich enough. But they can't just sit back and let us foot the entire bill. Americans are through with footing the bill so Europeans can run around carefree and have the comfortability of knowing that they are safe and protected by the US government and get to enjoy their utopian socialism. Donald Trump has successfully gotten the European countries to finally become an asset to the alliance. And that leads to the second big win of this deal, which is America is through sending our own money over to Europe to defend Europe from a bad European guy. We are selling these weapons over to Germany, who will then disperse them to Ukraine. Since we have extensive military assets already in place in Germany, we can move those assets to Ukraine much quicker. And then Germany will spend its money paying American companies to replace the equipment that it sent to Ukraine. And that is all Americans wanted to see, is that Europe was taking its own defense seriously. We were confused how somehow this European problem landed on our plate and required $350 billion of our dollars. If from the beginning, Europe was paying for American weapons to send to Ukraine, Americans probably would have had little to no problem with sending a little bit of money to help and aid if it was clear from the beginning that Europe was taking this seriously. So to recap, Pressure gets put on Putin because the United States is seriously back into this conflict. Ukraine gets the weapons that it needs to protect itself from this Russian summer aggression. Americans aren't paying for it. In fact, Europe is paying us for it. That's good for the economy. And lastly, you have the renewed energy coming out of NATO. Donald Trump gets the countries to increase their spending, and they're even putting their money where their mouth is only weeks after that promise by buying $10 billion worth of missiles from America. Listen to CNN reporting on this, and you tell me, when have you ever heard the Democrat media talk about Trump this fondly?
I am very happy at the moment of the U.S.-NATO role. We're on the back of the NATO summit where almost every one of our European allies agreed to a 5% of GDP. That's more than we spend in terms of GDP. We spend about 3.5. So Europe is waking up to the need to meet the defense spending. So with that as backdrop, here comes the Secretary General, Mark Rutte. I know him well. He's a 14-year prime minister of the Netherlands. He has managed the Trump account quite well. And here's the point, Kate. What I'm watching for is Mark Rutte to say, in the presence of the president, yes, we are going to take the weapons systems that the United States is going to provide to Ukraine. We will purchase them and we will send them on to Ukraine. It's a very nice win-win. That's the key thing to watch as this visit unfolds.
I've always said from the beginning, there's going to come a day where the Democrats are going to be so thankful that rational people like me and many of the people watching this video voted for Donald Trump, because he's going to be good for all Americans. I didn't vote for Donald Trump just because I thought I was going to benefit. I knew the country was going to benefit. And that includes the crazy liberals that live amongst us. We know liberals live in fairy tale world. They don't live in reality. So that's why it was so important that the adults regain control. They're worried about the way Trump is talking to our NATO allies. Oh, he's being mean. Oh, they don't respect us. Oh, they don't respect him. We're pushing them into the arms of China. Their irrational hatred of Donald Trump has completely clouded their judgment. Donald Trump wasn't being mean. He was using leverage. He was getting things done. This is top-level geopolitics. This isn't playtime in the sandbox. Europe doesn't respect him, right? That's why they committed to 5%. That's why they're now spending their money to buy missile systems. That's why the European Union right now, as we speak, is expediting reaching a trade agreement with the United States. It's this suicidal empathy and compassion that leads all Democrat philosophy and thinking, where the only thing that matters to them is if you're polite and kind and as passive as possible. Now, you heard the guy say on CNN that he was happy, but the host, she has to get her Trump bad comment out of him. So she follows up, okay, you're happy, but do you think it's going to stick?
Saying that he thinks that Trump is realizing that there is no other way than this kind of pressure on Putin, and how he's consistently said in the past week, at least, he is disappointed with him. What do you think's behind the shift? Do you think it'll actually stick?
I do think it's going to stick. And the reason is not because we're maneuvering brilliantly over here. As usual, democracies take a while to get organized and create a unified front. But I think the reason it'll stick is because Vladimir Putin appears to be not smart enough to back down, meaning Putin will continue to provoke the president. I see that happening. If he does that, watch for real NATO unity, additional offensive weapon systems, the spending of $300 billion in Russian money that's parked in Western banks, and certainly that sanctions bill that Lindsey Graham is pushing. That will have the effect of keeping Putin backing up. That's what we need to see.
He thinks it's going to stick. You know, it would almost be funny if it wasn't so depressing that there are Democrats out there right now who are furious that there is nothing bad to say about Donald Trump today, who will just ignore reality and be willfully ignorant just to maintain their perception that Donald Trump can do no right, that Donald Trump is an evil man that isn't respected on the world stage. They cannot lose hold of that belief. It is ingrained in their identity. It is the foundation of their morals, their principles, their beliefs. They have cut off family over these beliefs. They have staked their intelligence over these beliefs. But when I said showering praise, I meant showering praise. It does not stop there at CNN. Here is MSNBC talking about Donald Trump like he's a human being. Can you believe it?
On some nights last week, more than 700 drones and missiles were over Ukraine, many of them over Kyiv. The damage was largely in civilian areas. These were not, for the most part, military targets. So, yeah, that's not nice. So for 6 months now, President Trump has been alternating between making threats about Russia and returning to his initial hope that he could negotiate a peace deal. He finally seems to understand that without more pressure, he's not going to get anything like a resolution of this conflict, which he often speaks about emotionally. He speaks about the death on the battlefield, hundreds and thousands of people killed.
Wow, Trump gets emotional at the thought of thousands and thousands of young people dying every week in a needless war. But I thought he was a monster. I thought he was Adolf Hitler. I thought he hated brown people. I thought he was coming to take everybody's rights away. Nah, there's no way he's a genuine dude who doesn't want to see thousands of people die every week. Like, just think about how productive we could be as a nation if half the citizens didn't want to see the United States burn and crumble simply because it would make Trump look bad. But because they're so chronically anti-Trump, they're going to have to choose. Do they celebrate this because their beloved Ukraine is getting what it needs to defend itself? Or do they now publicly admit that they never actually cared about Ukraine? They only liked supporting Ukraine because it pushed their narrative that Donald Trump was a Vladimir Putin puppet. But that's why this win is too big to ignore. And here's another show on MSNBC showing President Trump some love.
Ambassador Taylor, we heard the NATO Secretary General call this weapons deal a big deal. And he said, understandably, the president wants Europe to step up. And he says this is Europe stepping up, paying for these weapons that are going to be made here in the U.S. or sent to NATO from the U.S., sold to NATO. How big of a deal is this? How do you see it impacting Ukraine's ability to defend itself against Russia?
Okay, pause it. Before he answers, what do you think he's going to say? Is he going to pull a, oh, well, it's good today. Donald Trump is flip-floppy. He may not have this support next week. It is MSNBC. You know, they can't be too kind to President Trump. They have to find some way to criticize. And you can tell by the way the lady asked the question, this is what she is fishing for. She needs her Trump is bad moment of the day. Well, let's hear the answer.
That's a big deal. It's a very big deal. I've heard $10 billion in some sense, plus or minus. But that's a lot of funds. That's a lot of weapons. And as Vaughn says, these are weapons that are already in Europe. These are probably Patriot systems that are already in, let's say, Germany, that can go quickly into Ukraine and defend Ukrainian cities, defend the Ukrainian military, defend civilians. They can go quickly in there, and the Germans then will buy replacements from the U.S. So this is a big deal.
Sorry, lady. It is a big deal. Again, I don't know if I've seen the mainstream media report this kindly on Donald Trump in a decade. And it's glaringly obvious they're doing this because there's substantial benefit to Ukraine. Because in terms of wins for America, this is like not even on the top 5. But it's just another example how all of the Democrat doomsday predictions constantly fall flat. The U.S. Treasury reported a $23 billion surplus last month due to tariff revenue. But the Democrat experts swore tariffs were going to send us into a recession, inflation was going to skyrocket, unemployment through the roof, and none of that has materialized. In fact, the opposite has happened. Gas prices are at 4-year lows, and they don't want to talk about it. There were 0 border crossings last month. They don't want to talk about that. All the positive Supreme Court rulings. UPenn taking away Leah Thomas's trophies. A huge win for the culture war. But Ukraine gets its missiles, and now the Democrats are willing to give Trump some credit. Isn't it funny he got no praise for all of the wars that he's ending across the world? But now that he's supporting a war continuing, the Democrats are thrilled. Says a lot about the Democrats. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Turn on those notification bells so you never miss a video. And I will see you guys in the next one.